and I can dig that. But that's for you and yours. Me and mine, we cool as a motherfucking icicle in the freezer. Oh yeah, by the way, your 12.5 minutes is up.
The 21st century saw a rise of black horror films that were led by black directors and often featured a number of black actors. No Longer the Other, or The Invisible Sidekick.
Hey Malik, you hold these books here for a minute?
Sure, why not? I am the token black guy. I'm just supposed to smile, stay out of the conversation, and say things like, damn, shit, and that is whack.
Black people finally took center stage in horror films, pushing white characters to the back, side, or even off the screen. The difference between black horror films and blacks in horror is that black horror films are often race films produced, directed, or written by a black creative. There is a common element added that emphasizes racial identity, specifically the black identity, in everything that composes the black experience.
Everybody knows the whole chicken distribution network is owned by the Klan.
Oh, come on, man, don't even go there.
When's the last time you seen a black chicken farm? Man, special recipe. I'm telling you, there's something in the batter that makes a black man sterile.
Oh, bullshit. Yo, hold up, man. Why all of a sudden you so concerned with the plight of the black man? Last time I checked, you was not black. Now, I don't know exactly what you are, but you damn sure ain't no black man.
In the 21st century, the market for horror films were changing, generally catering towards a younger generation of hip-hop consumers. From 2001 to 2010, over 100 hip-hop influenced horror films were made. Hip-hop is historically a genre born out of hardship, and the violence and suffering abound in horror often provide a perfect analogy and catharsis for real-life turmoil and trauma. These hip-hop horrors featured a number of rappers like Ice-T, Bizzy Bone, Ja Rule, and most memorably, Snoop Dogg as supporting or leading characters. Not only did they star in it, but their original music was a prominent feature for the soundtrack of the film. This music was often a part of horrorcore, a subgenre of hip-hop with origins in the 1980s that included themes similar to horror with dark lyrical content. Film titles often use non-traditional slang spelling, like changing the letter S at the end of a word to the letter Z. This was common practice in hip-hop, and allowed these films to make a direct relation. Bones is a 2001 black horror film directed by Ernest Dickerson, starring Snoop Dogg, Pam Grier, Khalil Kain, and Bianca Lawson. Snoop Dogg plays Jimmy Jones, a 1970s smooth gangster beloved by his community. When he refuses to join forces with the low-life criminals planning to move drugs into his community, Jimmy is killed by those closest to him. 20 years later, Jones is back as a maleficent ghost, haunting those who bother his final resting place and killing everyone who contributed to his death and the death of his community. Dickerson pays homage to the blaxploitation era with its 1970s-style clothing, and even actress Pam Grier playing a reimagined version of her various blaxploitation characters. Unfortunately, hip-hop horrors held a double-edged sword too similar to blaxploitation films. Hip-hop horrors aimed for socio-political reflection by those within the black community struck by drugs and violence and those outside it. But in doing so, they often portrayed common stereotypes troubling for black people and genders as a whole. Women often played prostitutes, and men, drug dealers, and pimps. The hood was most commonly the focus for hip-hop horror settings, using it not only for aesthetic purposes, but for its preconceived notions to achieve a message. Bones received mixed reviews by the critics. News sources like the New York Times, the LA Times, and Variety gave good reviews, while Entertainment Weekly didn't, calling the black horror pure trash. Although most reviews prided the film's use of comedy and an unusual density of scary imagery. Despite a moderate $16 million budget, star power, and a relatively high place on the Billboard 200 for the soundtrack, Bones only made about $7 million, partly due to little promotion. Director Ernest Dickerson, skeptical of the industry's commitment to black filmmaking, said, "There is an element that really does not want African Americans to gain a significant foothold in making films. Despite its comparison to Nightmare on Elm Street, Bones struggled in the box office. Fast forward about 16 years later, black horror is finally beginning to find its footing in Hollywood with films like Jordan Peele's Get Out and Us, whom somewhat set the bar for black creatives and others seeking to create socio-political horrors.